Welcome everyone to another episode of the Black Beauty Activist podcast. I am your host, Dr. Tameka. And for those that don't know me, I'm an educator, author, researcher, empowerment speaker, and a lover of all things Black culture. And I would like to start this episode off by paying reverence to a woman by the name of Larissa Brady. Larissa is the woman at Ohio State University who committed suicide at her daughter's graduation this past May 5th. The news report stated that Larissa had been suffering from mental health illnesses and challenges for quite some time. And it's so unfortunate that she decided to take her life. But what's even worse is that she decided to do it at her daughter's graduation. So please, let's take a moment of silence to send love and peace to the family and to just pray for all of those who suffer from mental health illnesses. Thank you. In the Black community, we don't like to talk a lot about mental health issues. We downright overlook them. We downright sweep them under the rug and dismiss them, but they are real, whether we want to admit it or not. And in honor of May being Mental Health Awareness Month, I wanted to have a very special person come on who is a research colleague of mine, who is a friend of mine, and who focuses her work on mental health, but from a beauty perspective. She and I have published together. I was blessed enough to be with her in February in Boston on tour with my book, Black Hair in a White World. And I've learned so much from her. She's just an incredible person to know. And I'm talking about none other than my sister friend, Dr. Afiya Mbilishaka. Hey, sis.
Hey.
Thank you for being here. And thank you for taking some time. She just told me that she's on tour with her book right now.
Yeah.
And where did you say you were?
I am in Philadelphia.
Wow, that's wonderful. I'm glad it's kicking off with a great, success already.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a vibe. It's a vibe. I have to learn from you about this tour process and sustaining energy and
Yeah.
staying on the case to uplift the race.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I love that. Yes.
That's
Yes.
me. That's Khalid Muhammad.
I love it. Okay, so I'm going to read your bio so that everybody can learn a little bit about you and the work that you've been doing. And you know what I wanted to say? I wanted to welcome you with a kwaba.
Oh, everyone's welcome.
Yes, absolutely. And what I learned about Dr. Afiya when I was in Boston and I had a chance to spend some time with her and her husband is that they have been like learning Tree, which is the language of the people in Ghana. And so I put her on the phone with one of my close friends and they got a chance to speak Tree together, which is wonderful. So, you're just an amazing person. And I love everything that you stand for and and how can I say, how deep you are in our culture in wanting to educate, uplift, and help us all be better. That's what you do. And I think that's one of the reasons why, I am so attached to you because we have a similar mission and, we do it in different ways, but the mission is similar. And so, Dr. Afiya, it's, a pleasure to have you here. Akwapa, sister friend. So in today's episode, we will be discussing how Black women's hair perceptions are deeply connected to our mental health. Before we do that, I'll read Dr. Afiya's bio. Dr. Afiya Mbilishaka is a therapist, educator, research scientist, hair historian, and hairstylist. She is the owner of Ma'at Psychological Services, a private practice in Washington, D.C., focusing on promoting balance and restoring order to the lives of her clients. She focuses on understanding and using traditional African cultural rituals for contemporary holistic mental health practices. She is a graduate of the University of Pennsylvania. She studied the psychological significance of race within lives and earned a PhD in clinical psychology from Howard University at the age of 26. She is the former Association of Black Psychologists DC chapter president. And Dr. Afiya innovated the practice and research called psychotherapy, where she uses hair as an entry point for mental health services in beauty salons and barbershops, as well as through social media. She is the principal investigator of the Psychotherapy Research Lab, and Dr. Afiya has published over 20 peer-reviewed journal articles, 10 book chapters, and 2 books. She has presented at over 40 universities and conferences. Dr. Mbilishaka has been identified as a subject matter expert by the Senate and House representative, testifying nationally on behalf of the Crown Act, an anti-discriminatory law to protect Black hair. She has now gone international with her work, leading cultural and mental health focused trips in Cuba and to various African countries. Dr. Mbilishaka is a natural hair stylist at In Natural Hair Studio in Silver Spring, Maryland, where she loves creating art with locks, twists, and afros. And Dr. Afiya and I are, she's one of my co-authors. I wrote a book with a good friend of mine, Dr. Joseph Underwood. We did an amazing exhibition called Textures, the History and Art of Black Hair, and we published a book. And Dr. Afiya is one of our co-authors, and she's also a co-author on my latest book, Black Hair in a White World. So it's an honor to have her on. I've been wanting to have you on for a while, but I'm glad that, we were able to figure out a time to do it and to have it be done during May, Mental Health Awareness Month, for sure.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
I have some updates on that bio, but it was great to listen to. I'm like, oh, I got
And I'm thinking, as I'm reading it, I'm like, okay, I read what you sent me, honey.
I know. I need to review it. I need to review it. Update
Yes.
it. It's a living document, right?
It is. It's constantly changing.
Yeah, my identity is shifting and changing, especially over the past few years. And so I'm mindful of that, and even how we author our own stories and how we tell our stories about ourselves to other people. So as you were talking, I was getting really reflective about my life.
Oh my gosh. So we're going to start this interview, and I just want to know a little bit more about you. Can you talk about how you grew up and what got you really interested in focusing your career on mental health and hair?
Okay. So I am an 80s baby, born and raised in Long Island, New York. And I basically was Rudy Huxtable on the Cosby Show. So I'm the youngest of 4 children, of a high achieving and highly successful Black family.
Nice.
In the sense that both of my parents actually have their PhDs. I don't know if I talk about that often, but I almost felt bred to be able to do this process. While my siblings did not go on to get PhDs, they still were very high achieving, going to Princeton and Yale and things like that. And so I was my family's hairstylist. Even though I was the youngest, I still did family members' hair. I would do my sister's hair. She's 7 years older than me, but I actually was responsible for her hair. And she has a ton of it. And this was where I got to experiment and explore beauty and hair care. And even at family cookouts, I would have a lawn chair set up, and I would do my relatives' hair, my little cousin's hair outside during family cookouts. And so when I went to college, then at the University of Pennsylvania, I continued to do hair. I just enjoyed it. It was therapeutic for me. It was a creative outlet in this very highly stressful academic space. And a lot of the Black students came to my dorm room to get their hair done, not necessarily because I was the most skillful, but because I didn't charge anyone. I was not business minded, and I just wanted to do hair because I got to feel connected to other students. I knew everything that was happening on campus. I know who was dating who. I knew who was doing well.
You got all the tea?
All of it. That this was an opportunity just to have these conversations. And I enjoyed it. I ended up maybe switching majors a few times. My first semester in college, I was pre-dentistry. I wanted to become a dentist. And I took the science and math prerequisites, just early on, first semester courses of calculus and biology, and I hated them. I didn't necessarily just hate them because of the content. I hated the environment. And so I don't talk
Mm,
about this often, but there was such a sense of palpable racism
mm,
as a young Black girl. Because I'm saying girl, I started college at 17, this young Black girl, and I felt like the sciences were more aggressive. I felt like my lab mates were like taking things out of my hands in the lab,
mm,
experiences like that. And so I did not want to be a dentist anymore if I had to continue in sort of the hard STEM science area.
mhm,
So I did something unique where I had my friends pick my entire schedule for the spring semester, because I said, you know what, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. And so they ended up putting me in a psychology class, and I loved it. I loved
mm,
it so much. This introduction to psychology class had about 500 students in it. And the professor was this white male from Australia. He cursed a lot. He had like a wireless mic and would just make jokes. And I was entertained. I paid
yeah,
attention. I studied and I did well in that class. And so I decided to take more psychology classes and realized that there was something that I was really connecting to. But also, I noticed that there were so many gaps and holes in what was being discussed. Anytime Black people were brought up, it was that there was some deficit, something was wrong with
mm,
that Black
mm,
men are 6 times more likely to be diagnosed with schizophrenia or things like
mm,
that, or have low IQs. And
mm,
but I didn't have Black psychology professors to explain that. And so I really wanted to dedicate my life and my career to filling in those gaps, those
mhm,
disparities related to mental health and race. And so with that, I decided to go to Howard because I'm like, where can I study Black mental health the best? So that was it. But even before that, and navigating that psychology major space, I remember talking to my aunt on the phone one day. She's now an ancestor, and telling her I didn't know if I wanted to go on to study psychology or to study hair after I graduated. And so she said simply, why can't you do both? And a light bulb went off. Oh my gosh, I could do both. Now, I don't think she was telling me to do both at the same exact time, but
right.
that's the way I processed it and made meaning of it. And I said, I can do hair and psychology simultaneously.
Mm,
So went to grad school at Howard. I was bringing up this hair concept, and they're like, okay, they were acting like they didn't know what I was talking about. But when I would talk to community members, like, this is great. So went on, got all the degrees, became a professor, started private practice, and then I went to hair school. So
mm,
that was the order in which I approached sort of hair and mental health, first being a psychologist, then being a beauty professional,
yeah,
and developing curriculum that basically took all of my years of training, and I share that with other people now.
nice, nice. And so, in your research about hair and mental health, what has been one of the most unanticipated findings, or something that was just a finding that was just gave you some revelations?
Okay. I have a research study called Don't Sweat Your Hair Out, published in a journal of exercise and nutrition. And I say that this study was the most surprising. I wanted to see if there was a relationship between having natural hair and engaging in healthy eating practices and exercise. I thought that there would be some connection, like, okay, you want to be holistic and take care of yourself. No, that's not what the data said. That
Mm,
there actually was not a relationship. Um,
really?
the biggest factor in exercise and nutrition was um, their weight. That people who there was like a correlation between basically the less you weigh, the more likely you were to exercise and eat healthy, which is like, okay, duh. But to me, I thought I was going to discover some meaningful thing, like women with natural hair are
Uh-huh.
healthier people. No, that's
Hmm.
not what the data said. So,
You know, I actually did a research study about self-esteem and quality of life.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I covered was talking about that very thing, whether or not, Black women who wear natural hair, if they're more, like if they do go out and work out and are physical or whatever. Well, what I found out was that they are there. What it is like those women who are natural now are less afraid to go swimming.
Yes.
Yes, so they're less afraid to go swimming because the chemicals in the hair and all that. They feel better about working out because they don't feel like they have to, disrupt the hairstyle that they just got. So, but it's interesting that that wasn't a factor. I would have assumed that was a factor too.
I had a whole hypothesis. I probably referenced your research in mine, but that's not what these
Oh my
particular
gosh.
participants said. So,
Hey, you have to go with whatever the findings say for sure. What are some of Black women's most critical challenges that they have with hair, and how does that impact mental health?
hmm. I think that Black women have been exposed to unrealistic advertised norms, meaning that there's things in the media that suggest that there's some sort of ideal beauty related to our hair, whether long hair or looser curl patterns or straight hair being the ideal. And so I think that there's oftentimes a conflict about how much to conform to those beauty ideals. I know
Mm.
even for myself, okay, I'm going to reveal something. For years and years, I never put hair into my hair. I never added fake hair or, human hair
Mhm.
for
Yeah.
braids or anything. But even in this moment, I can't help but I have this is not my ponytail. So, but I've only since the pandemic have I actually put hair into my hair as like an experimental thing. And I have this, even me personally, this conflict, like, why do I want to vary the length of my hair? Well, I think it's just fun to
Mm.
have different looks and experiment depending on what I'm wearing. But I need to be mindful of what like length means in terms of
Mhm.
femininity and beauty. But short hair is beautiful. Um, and I even need to challenge myself more, and I think other Black women as well, to experience being bald, um,
Yep.
to have varying hair lengths in terms of
Mhm.
above the shoulder.
Yep.
I think that that's a topic that even if you have natural hair, is still being negotiated.
Yeah, because length is always connected to femininity. And
Mhm.
we automatically assume that if you don't have long flowing hair, then you're somehow less feminine.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And even with this, I'm like, okay, my hair probably ends right here, so I got I'm like how much to add since I do have length. So it's
You
just
know what? Let me tell you what my rationale was for being okay to put extensions in your hair. Is I think about the Himba people.
Mhm.
I think about other ancestors that we have in Africa that use animal hair like goat hair and other things to embellish their hair or protect their hair. And so I look at that as just like an extension of it. So braids I'm cool with, but the other stuff I'm not cool with, you
Mhm.
know, and because it's we can go into a whole conversation about that. But yeah, I'm okay with the braid extensions for sure because I think about our ancestors and the fact that they have been doing it for a long time.
Yeah, and black hair can grow
Yes.
very yeah.
What are some tools that women can begin to develop who are suffering from low self-esteem and anxiety, and any other mental health challenges as a result of their perceptions about their hair or overall beauty? What are
Mm.
some things that they can do?
Well, I definitely am an advocate for therapy.
Yeah.
So therapy we can define as a collaborative process of change. Sometimes when you try to work on things like self-esteem alone, we can get sort of stuck or maybe not notice some of our blind spots. And so having a conversation is very helpful because in therapy we often say the thing what you don't talk out, you act out. And so when you something,
Wow.
yeah, causing harm or has some consequence. And so if you are able to talk about it, tell a story about it, process it aloud, then your body doesn't have to perform it and experience it. So it's one thing to say, I don't feel so great about myself. Another thing is to, like, you know, use a lace front every day and notice that your skin's changing and not taking it off, but you're too afraid to show your hair, something like that, where if you could actually express it and think about the origin of it, that can have impact. I definitely am a believer in affirmations. There's this woman, Louise Hay, who
Yeah, absolutely. Hay House, absolutely.
that
Yeah,
really focus on the conversations that we have about ourselves, but often would encourage people to do mirror work, literally
yeah.
looking in the mirror
Mm-hmm.
at the most basic level, saying, I love you.
Yeah.
Several times a day, each time you pass a mirror. And so just even work like that, which you'd be surprised a lot of people cannot
Mm-hmm.
do,
They
cannot
sure can.
and say, I love
Yep.
you. Or another piece that she says we should say all the time is, I accept myself.
Mm-hmm.
And what kind of work then needs to happen for you to believe that and buy in? Not only just saying it in the mirror, but actually um, unpacking the different parts that makes you you, um,
Yeah.
and appreciating where you are
Yeah.
and where you'll go, and being patient in the process of manifesting this alignment with how you'd like to see yourself in the most optimal health. So things like that, affirmations, being in sister circles. I really like
Mm-hmm.
a book by Dr. Joy, who created therapy for Black girls, and she has a book called Sisterhood Heals. And
Okay.
just been thinking about these conversations that we have with other Black women being extremely healing and therapeutic, when we're sort of on that same vibe of
Yeah.
self improvement and self love. So, a variety of things, but I definitely am a therapy advocate.
You know, as you were talking, something I just had a revelation.
Mhm.
Um, because what you said, okay, the way that you said it, you said something about when you can say it, you don't act it out. How did you say that? How did you say it? Can you say that one more time? I don't know how you said it.
What you don't talk out, you act out.
What you don't talk out, you act out. Now, I've been saying something similar to that, but I didn't realize that it was a something psycho like that, that was a practice that talk about in therapy. Um, because I've been on this journey of being an empowerment speaker, I talk a lot about my story. And I often say, and people ask me, like, well, how do you just do that? How do you get up and just talk about yourself like that? And I said, well, you know what? The way that I look at it is, if I can talk about it, that means I've healed from it.
Mm.
If I can tell my story and tell somebody about the things that I've gone through and how I've grown, that means that I've healed from it. But if I'm not talking about it, that means that it's still hurting me.
Mm.
It's still inside, it's still hurting me.
Mhm.
And so I've been trying to get, like, I have a really special person in my life who I grew up with, who has been dealing with some issues for quite a while. And she just won't go talk to anybody. She just won't. And she doesn't, a lot of that is still, it's still inside of her, still affecting her body. And I wish that she would just open up and just talk about the things that she has dealt with in her life, because it does change your life. When I first started going to therapy, it was a secret. I didn't tell anybody in my family. I
Mm.
don't think my mom even still knows that I go to therapy.
Well, the cat's out of the bag.
Like, she knows now. But yeah, I didn't tell anybody for a long time that I was going to see a therapist, because my family, like, they'll say things like, oh, you ain't crazy, ain't nothing wrong with you, and blah 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 blah, right? We say those things, but therapy definitely helps, for sure.
Yeah, you're bringing up the importance of processing shame.
Ooh,
So
wow,
there's a
wow.
shame researcher, Brene Brown,
Yeah.
that everything she really unpacks the meaning. But in her work, she oftentimes explains that if we talk about something that brings us shame, it goes away. But if
Oh, yes.
we talk about shame, it
Yes.
increases. And so I think what you're talking about for your friend in particular, it's just going to keep growing and growing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Takes an action step. So in substance use counseling, there's something called the trans theoretical model of change. And so there are different stages to change.
Mm-hmm.
The first being pre-contemplation, not thinking that any change needs to happen. Contemplation, where you're giving it some thought. Okay, I need to do this differently. Preparation, where you do research on the change. Action, where you take that step to finally do the thing that you've been thinking about. And then there's a maintenance step in terms of what that change. How do you continue to hold on to it? Because if you don't do the maintenance step consistently, then what happens is that people can have relapse, right?
Yeah.
Needing to start back over. But I think about that in terms of eating healthier, going to therapy, stop using certain substances, or even in going natural, right?
Yeah.
I had a research study with some students where we applied the trans theoretical model of change in going natural, because recognizing that chemical relaxers are a drug and
Yes,
harmful
they are.
to the body. And so that people even go through that same process, because I think even in the past 2 or 3 years, I've been seeing a lot of women who had gone natural going back to chemical relaxers. And so even that relapse stage that happens too.
Well, that's one of the questions that I was going to ask you is where I was going to, talk about the fact that there's this debate going on that the natural hair movement, as we know it, has waned itself off, and that a lot of women who went natural during that time are now going back to straightening their hair. So have you found that, that that's to be true?
Okay. I come from a family of educators and historians, so I always think about how trends are cyclical.
Oh, yeah.
I
Hmm.
think, my mom always reminds me that this is not the first natural hair movement.
Absolutely.
She always says the first natural hair movement was in the 60s and 70s, and that
Uh-huh.
she was a part of that natural hair movement. And she often says that people mislabel the hairstyle as an afro. And she said, we didn't call it that. We called it the natural.
Yeah.
So to even think about that cycle then from like the 70s, and then 30 years later, the 2000s, and then I think
Hmm.
it might be a transition maybe
Hmm.
of going back to some chemical use, and then another 30 years. So I
Yeah.
do think things happen in patterns. And as you know, for
Yeah.
fashion,
Yeah.
um, where jean sizes are constantly in fluctuation, whether from bell bottoms to skinny
Yeah.
jeans to
Yeah.
baggy jeans to skinny again to I don't know what the current style is, but
Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right. The fashion cycle, life cycles, very, very similar. Absolutely, absolutely. But I don't know if I'm naive to think that maybe one day wearing natural hair will no longer be a trend, that it'll be a way of life, and that people won't just be doing it because it's trendy. Because it seems like really that's kind of what happened, you know? That's kind of what happened. It was really trendy because the natural hair movement was very new and everybody was excited about it, you know? And then as the natural hair movement kind of slowed down, people, like you said, went back.
Mhm.
Yeah. I wish that it was not like that, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where do you see the future of psychotherapy going? Are there new developments or expansions that you're particularly excited about?
Mhm. Okay. It's interesting. I in the past loved to dream, like daydream. I haven't been daydreaming as much lately, and I need to check myself and what that means.
Mm,
But in past daydreams, I would picture psychotherapy being a core curriculum to cosmetology and barbering school.
nice.
In order to become a licensed cosmetologist or barber, that you actually have to um, take coursework in mental health first aid that is culturally relevant and emotionally significant. Um, I'm imagining way more research being done on the topic. I feel like there will be more evidence-based approaches. Even right now, I'm doing a research study with Bowie State University to do pre and post tests and hopefully more longitudinal or long-term tests
Mm-hmm,
of
mm-hmm.
people who've gone through the training
Yeah.
to see the outcomes on their community and their
Yeah.
skill sets. I'm hoping to open up salons. That's
Okay,
something I've
sis.
been thinking about. So even last night at a salon in Philadelphia called Seth McKinley Hair Studio, it was absolutely gorgeous. This salon had chandeliers, and I'm
I
just like
love it.
through, and I, it makes me think about just the importance of having sort of brick and mortar space to do this healing work. So hoping to have salons, maybe of my own psychotherapy salons.
That would be dope.
Yeah,
That would
right.
be dope. That would be dope.
Yeah, and a school, a psychotherapy school. Maybe I could have my own cosmetology school or natural hair school or barbering school for psychotherapists, so therapists and stylists. Because fun fact, my original concept of psychotherapy was training therapists to do hair. That was my original.
Ah, is that right?
I had an intervention for one of my professors at Howard, and she was like, "I don't think I want a therapist doing my hair." And I'm like, "You're right. Okay, so let's show stylists how to do therapy." So I remember in my first year of grad school with one of my professors having a conversation when we were collecting data at a school. So I think but I think that could happen. Some stylists are, well, some therapists are looking into even entering beauty way more. So we'll
Mm.
see.
And what you said in the beginning about daydreaming,
Mm.
giving, you and I, when we first started the conversation, I was telling you that I haven't really given myself a day to just relax. And when you do take the time to daydream, as Dr. Afiya says, there's so many amazing things that can come to you, projects that you might want to do, new ideas. But if you don't give yourself the opportunity to just sit and just think, then, and I'm guilty. I'm trying to carve out some time where I can just do nothing, just stay at home, do nothing, and just, like you said, daydream.
Mm. Yeah.
Mm.
I have a book club with psychotherapy, the psychotherapy book club. And so usually every
Is
other
it virtual? Is it virtual?
virtual. Yes.
Okay. Send me a link. I would love to come.
Yes, of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah.
So we usually do it every other month. And in January of 2023, our book of the month was Rest is Resistance by Trisha Hersey. I think that's her name.
Mm.
Just the concept that Black women oftentimes just do not get a chance to rest. And
Mm-hmm.
that there's such an extreme grind culture that comes from
Yeah.
capitalism, racism, sexism, all of the isms, that Black women are at this unique intersection of constantly being engaged in labor. And just how we perpetuated ourselves, right? So even if we are able to escape from working at a university or a corporate setting, that we still then recreate
Yes.
those same
Yep.
pressures of
We do.
overworking ourselves. Like, where is the standard of burnout coming from? And so
Uh-huh.
um, that book was really a wake up call. Probably need to read it again. Uh,
Mm.
because I'm recognizing that I haven't been fully indulging in rest, and rest is not a luxury, it's a requirement for being alive.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Wow. And you recently published your book, Laid to the Side.
Yes.
And I started reading it, and one of the quotes that spoke to me, and I would love for us to spend a little bit of time unpacking this. This was in the chapter called Chapter 4, Black Enough by
Mhm.
Faith Armstrong.
Yep.
Okay, so,
She was at the event last night. So we
oh,
had
was she?
Mhm.
Okay. Well, she says in her chapter, we must understand that Black hair trauma is not limited to skin tone or texture. Our environment and conditioning can deeply influence how we come to see ourselves and the world around us. That's deep.
Yeah.
That's deep. And the way that the reason why it really spoke to me is because I was just in conversation with someone else who was talking. It was a person who was or maybe you know what, girl, I was in conversation with this book. That's what it was. I was in conversation with your book. So I'm like, yeah, like, there was another chapter in the book. A young lady was talking about the fact that she was biracial and growing up in an environment where most of the people were Black, or her sisters, her siblings were Black, and she was biracial, and how it was very different for her. And I think about my son, who is also biracial. I have a 24-year-old son who's biracial. And I think about a lot of times people that are biracial or multiracial have a hard time fitting into a category. And oftentimes we assume that if they have a certain aesthetic, that their life had to have been easier, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's trauma on both ends.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's trauma, different kind of trauma, but it's trauma on both ends.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was just reviewing some data from the documentary Dark Girls that had a big connection to the Association of Black Psychologists.
Yeah.
And in there, they were citing studies that anyone who feels like they're on the extreme of skin color, the extreme of hair texture, feels, well, they said reported lower self-esteem than people who say they're someplace in the middle.
Wow.
And so I was really struck by that data, because we oftentimes think that colorism and texturism exclusively privilege lighter skin people or straighter hair, curlier hair. But from self-report, again, thinking about what the data says, that they actually will disclose, no, I don't feel that great in comparison to other Black people or people of color. Or so even in Faith's chapter, her chapter is in the section called Length Check. And I think she starts that section out of the book. And I put hers there, even though her story isn't exclusively about length, but it's this concept of checking how we think about it, right? That we can make the assumption that long is great. She didn't want to have long hair. And in that particular chapter, she talks about always putting it in a bun, because she didn't want people at school to see the length of her hair.
Right.
It was othering. And so even it was, in her own home that she had different hair than her mother and sisters who were Black. But just the shame that she carried around hair length, which again, a lot of us would think, no, we want to have the long hair, going back to the ponytail, right? We want to have the long hair. But to think about how environment shapes what we see as good and attractive. There's even this saying that he who controls images controls minds, right? So even thinking about what we're seeing influences and directly dictates
excuse me,
beauty standards and things like that. So I think that quote definitely makes me think about context specific and to not make assumptions.
Absolutely. It makes you, especially doing the work that we do, it makes you think broader.
Yes.
It makes you think broader about the whole situation. Yeah. Yes. Where do you think the Black hair culture is going in the future?
Hope is going back to Africa.
Wouldn't that be beautiful?
Yeah. In terms of using certain rituals related to hair that our ancestors have used, or even our contemporaries have used related to health and wellness, from baby naming ceremonies to funeral rites, to really include hair and rituals of our lives. I think You're creating styles that really speak to identity, and who you belong to.
Wouldn't
Um,
that be beautiful to get back to something like that?
mhm.
Girl, that would be beautiful.
Or even having to earn the privilege of wearing certain hairstyles. And a lot of the research I've done, I see for rites of passage
Yeah,
programs that you have to fulfill certain knowledge
absolutely.
requirements or physical traits to like be able to, for the Maasai, for example, to
I
be
was
in
going
this
to say the Maasai warriors.
exactly
Absolutely.
work together to kill a lion. And
Yes.
that's not like going and killing lions for fun, but this is something to protect their community, because in this
Right.
particular part of the world that they live in, that's a threat to their family members. And so to have that skill set, then you get to wear locks. So to even
Yeah.
think about factors like that, where you have to earn the respect of a certain hairstyle.
God, that would be, oh God, that's a dream right there, isn't it? That's a dream. Okay, so how can the audience stay connected with you and how can they get your book?
Oh, okay. So probably my preferred method is Instagram. You can follow me at Dr. Afiya, Dr_AFIYA, Dr. Afiya on Instagram, and also Laid to the Side, spelled like
Yeah.
that, Laid to the Side on Instagram, or laidtotheside.com. You can download an e-copy of it instantaneously, or you can order a copy on Amazon. Or if you want to buy in bulk, go on Ingram Spark. So this is actually self-published. In the past, I've gone through
Hmm.
traditional presses, and I wanted to try something new
Hmm.
with this particular book.
Yeah. And we can have another conversation about that one too.
Yes.
Yeah. About the process of self publishing for sure. Yeah.
Mhm.
There's some pluses and minuses to both.
Yeah,
Pluses and minuses to both.
I agree.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Afiya, my sister, I love you, and I just want to thank you for spending some time with me and having a conversation about what we both love talking about.
Yes.
And I wish you all the best on your tour,
Thank
and
you.
hopefully, we'll get a chance to see each other once again soon.
Yes, yes,
Yeah, yeah.
yes.
Thank you, sis.
Thank you. Thank you for all of the work that you do, and your Black beauty activism is so needed.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a wonderful night.
You too. Take care.
All right, everybody, run out and grab her book. I am still in the process of reading through it, but it's so good. What I love about it is that it's very approachable. Afiya's book talks about stories, people's experiences, life, like lived experiences. And so that's what I love about it. It's not just like a research book, it's a book about life stories and how people have, dealt with, overcome situations with their hair. But as you all know, I'm a researcher, and it's really important for me to always give a resource. So you can see on the screen, Laid to the Side, Disrupting the Silence of Black Girls' Hair Stories in School by Dr. Afiya and her co-author, Danielle Apujo. I hope I pronounced that correctly. But please pick up her book. It's a great book. It's a great read. But it's important as someone who was a researcher, it's important as someone who's an educator. Every time I jump on this podcast, I have to give something of a resource to you all so that you can further your understanding about things. These topics are not just about things that are affecting me. These topics are affecting people globally, and so it's my duty to be able to always bring with me not only a topic to talk about, but also the data to back it up, or some research or something to back up what I'm talking about. And so thank you all for watching me. And we are going to be ending the show in just a moment. And I just want to say to you that this episode was brought to you by my book, Black Hair in a White World. If you have not gotten your copy, make sure that you get your copy. If you want to do a deep dive into Black hair history, politics about Black hair, self acceptance studies about Black hair, you will love this book. So pick it up. I'm actually on tour right now with Black Hair in the White World. The tour started in DC in July of last year. And I've had the opportunity to go to, as I mentioned, Boston. I was with Dr. Afiya. I was in New York and California and other places. And I'll be in Durham, North Carolina in June for Juneteenth. So I'm excited about all the many places that I'm going to be able to go. And if your organization would like to host me, please connect with me on my website, www.drtamekaellington.com, and just click on the contact and tell me all about your event. I would love to pull through. So for those of you that have been listening, I want to thank you for listening. And please share the episode on YouTube. Leave a comment if you enjoyed this and felt like you could benefit from it, and others who can benefit from it. Please share. Subscribe to my YouTube channel if you're not already subscribed. The Black Beauty Activist podcast YouTube channel. Please make sure that you subscribe. And as I say every episode that I end, always remember that on the other side of fear is your beautiful confidence. Have a good night, everybody.